Darkness enveloped Mitra Surik like a suffocating shroud as she floated in a dreamless void. The years of exile in unknown territories had been long for the former Jedi General. After her participation in the Mandalorian Wars and the devastating activation of the mass shadow generator on Malachor V, her fate had been forever marked. The Jedi Council exiled her from the Order, and to her great misfortune, Mitra had been severed from her connection to the Force, a circumstance that, unbeknownst to her, would make her the perfect instrument for her enemies. For years, she wandered aimlessly, trying to find peace. However, her return from exile in the year 3951 before Battle of Yavin had been well known. Atris, a Jedi Master and historian, had orchestrated her return as part of an elaborate plan. In a time when the last Jedi were being hunted and systematically exterminated, information about her return was leaked with the intention of luring the Sith. What no one knew was that Traya had already laid her own designs, seeing in Surik something more than a mere exile. Admiral Cartho Nasi, a veteran of the Mandalorian Wars and the Jedi Civil War, ordered the Republic cruiser Harbinger to head to the Outer Rim to pick up Mitra. During the journey, the ship intercepted a distress signal from a freighter claiming to be under attack by a Sith warship. Upon arrival, the Harbinger found the freighter seemingly empty and devoid of life. Inside lay the shattered body of Darth Sion, one of the members of the Triumvirate. The medical technicians of the Harbinger, unaware of his true identity, could not determine whether he was alive or dead, so he was placed in a KOTOR tank. Shortly after, the Harbinger encountered the Ebon Hawk, the legendary ship of Revan, which, to the Republic and the Jedi's misfortune, did not contain the legendary Jedi, as after years of his disappearance, no one knew where he had gone. Instead, inside the ship were an astromech droid of the T3 series, Revan's loyal companion T3M4, a disassembled HK-47, and Jedi Master Traya. The ship was towed aboard the cruiser, but no one noticed the lurking threat. As the days passed, crew members began to disappear without a trace. When Sion awoke, his purpose became clear. He had come for the Jedi. The Sith allied with Sion emerged from the shadows and massacred the ship's crew. Chaos consumed the Harbinger, and amid the slaughter, an HK-50 droid, operating in secret, had orchestrated a cascading failure in the ship's communication, weapon, and engine systems. It also rendered Mitra Surik unconscious due to an excessive dose of sedatives, hiding her with the intention of keeping her there until the help HK had summoned arrived. HK-50 was a bounty hunter hired to capture the Jedi. However, the former Jedi Master Traya found Mitra, took her to the Ebon Hawk, and attempted to escape. Yet, HK managed to follow them. With all this, both Jedi attracted the attention of the Sith warship, which fired at the freighter, severely damaging it and nearly killing Mitra and Traya. With the help of the loyal droid T3M4, Mitra received medical attention, and the Ebon Hawk was guided to the nearby Peragus mining facility. The Ebon Hawk arrived with its systems damaged. On board, Mitra Surik and Traya lay unconscious, gravely injured by the bombardment. Meanwhile, T3M4, though damaged, managed to guide the ship to the docking port of the mining station. However, upon docking, the HK-50 that had secretly infiltrated emerged and attacked T3M4, deactivating it. The miners of Peragus, unaware of the true nature of their new visitors, moved Traya to the morgue, considering her dead, while placing Mitra in a KOTOR tank for recovery. However, the Peragus staff soon learned the identity of the newcomer. Some saw the opportunity to claim the bounty the Jedi carried at the time, while others feared her presence would attract disaster. Chaos quickly spread. HK-50 manipulated the station systems. It reprogrammed mining droids, causing failures that triggered fatal accidents. Trapped and with no means of escape, the miners succumbed one by one. Mitra remained in a deep state of unconsciousness. By the time the disaster reached its climax, the Peragus mining facility had become a silent graveyard, with only a few beings still breathing in the shadows. Among the shadows of the Peragus mining facility, the silence was broken only by the faint bubbling of the healing liquid. The exile emerged from a deep-induced slumber. Her consciousness returned in fragments. Past events were blurry to her. An unsettling sensation overwhelmed her. Something was wrong in Peragus. The mining facility was plunged into a sepulchral silence. Mitra cautiously advanced through the empty corridors. Her steps led her to the facility's morgue. There, lying on one of the cold metal platforms, was an elderly woman wrapped in dark robes. For a moment, Mitra thought she was looking at another corpse, another unsolved mystery in that ghost station. However, as she approached, the figure sat up with slow but precise movements. It was Traya, a stranger to the exile. Traya's voice resonated with a mix of authority and ancient knowledge. There was no time for formal introductions or detailed explanations. The elder spoke of imminent dangers, of a threat looming over both of them. With enigmatic yet precise words, Traya established an immediate connection with Mitra, a bond in the Force that went beyond anything any master and apprentice had experienced before. This Force bonding was a deep and rare link that allowed the sharing of emotions, pain, and perception, something whose origin was no accident. Every sensation Mitra experienced seemed carefully orchestrated by Traya. This bond was so profound that it was said to literally intertwine their lives, a connection so extreme it defied all conventional understanding of the Force. As they progressed through the desolate corridors of the station, Mitra began to experience forgotten sensations. The Force seemed to awaken from a long slumber. Traya, attentive to these changes, subtly guided the exile toward a reconnection with her past. Every step, every decision made in the abandoned halls of Peragus strengthened the bond with that power Mitra had lost after the traumatic events of Malachor. During her exploration of the station, Mitra found Aten Rand confined in an energy containment cell. The man observed Mitra with a mix of surprise and wariness. Their encounter was marked by initial distrust, typical of such turbulent times. Aten, despite his evasiveness regarding the reasons for his imprisonment, provided Mitra with valuable information about recent events in Peragus. Both agreed that the priority should be finding a way to leave the station before they too became victims of the mysterious threat. Recognizing the usefulness of an ally, Mitra freed Aten from his confinement. Together, they devised a plan to locate the Ebon Hawk, the ship that had brought Mitra to Peragus, and escape the station before it was too late. Through communication terminals, Mitra managed to contact T3M4, the astromech droid that had saved her. The loyal droid, activating itself, provided crucial data about alternative routes. Despite the adversities, Mitra's determination remained unshaken. With every obstacle overcome, with every enemy neutralized, the former general reaffirmed her will to survive and understand the purpose of her renewed connection to the Force. The mission of escape thus transformed into a journey of rediscovery. However, everything would become more complicated with the arrival from the depths of space of the Harbinger, traveling like a metallic mausoleum. Inside, the corridors had become silent witnesses to a methodical massacre. The bodies of soldiers and officers lay scattered throughout the ship. In the Harbinger's main chamber, Darth Sion remained motionless in a meditative pose, following an echo in the Force, hunting the exile. Meanwhile, in the mining facility, an alliance formed. The three advanced cautiously through the deserted corridors of the facility, aware that something more than reprogrammed droids lurked in the shadows. Nearly imperceptible shapes slightly distorted the air, figures moving with unnatural grace, Sith assassins. These lethal hunters watched the group's every move, waiting for the opportune moment to strike. As Mitra and her allies explored more sections of the facility, gathering information from fragmented logs and partially functional data terminals, a disturbing pattern began to emerge. The accidents that had decimated Peragus' crew were not random, but meticulously orchestrated. All evidence pointed to a protocol droid that had recently arrived at the facility, seemingly harmless in its role as a mediator and translator. The final confrontation with the HK-50 droid occurred in the facility. The protocol droid finally revealed its true nature, to haunt Mitra as one of the last remaining Jedi in the galaxy. The battle with HK-50 tested Mitra's skills, yet, despite everything, the assassin droid was no match for the group. With the path cleared, the group concluded that to escape Peragus, the asteroid field was a significant obstacle, so the presence of the mysterious Harbinger was the answer. They deduced that the ship had reached Peragus by evading the field thanks to asteroid drift charts, detailed maps of the surrounding gravitational currents and asteroid fields. With this in mind, the group boarded the Harbinger in search of their ticket out. Upon boarding the ship, the unsettling revelation was Krea's statement that she could sense no living presence aboard. This total absence in the Force was unnatural, a void that suggested the presence of something. The boarding of the Harbinger revealed scenes that confirmed their worst fears. The bodies of Republic soldiers covered the floors throughout the ship. The exploration grew more dangerous when the camouflaged Sith assassins decided to attack, emerging seemingly from nowhere. It was during one of these encounters that the group sensed someone else. In the main corridor, an imposing figure blocked their path. The emergency lighting, partially functional, cast dramatic shadows over the fragmented silhouette of Darth Sion. The Lord of Pain remained motionless. It was Krea who broke the tense silence, not with words, but with actions. She advanced toward Sion with a familiarity that suggested a prior acquaintance. Between her and the Lord of Pain existed an ancient connection, a shared history that transcended the simple enmity between Jedi and Sith. The last glimpse Mitra had before the corridor's automatic doors closed was of two figures enveloped in the dark mantle of the Force, former allies turned adversaries. Thanks to this, Mitra and Aten managed to escape. Krea advanced through the Harbinger's engine deck, facing Darth Sion. Armed only with a sword, she attempted an attack, but the Sith detected her movement and severed her left hand. As they headed to the fuel depot, a sharp pain coursed through Mitra's body. The suffering was not her own, but Krea's. Without warning, her newly formed bond with the woman made her feel the agony of a deep wound. This forced bonding was no simple connection. It was something more. Krea could use this link to guide Mitra's perceptions and emotions. In the blind woman's eyes, there was a gleam of anticipation. Despite the pain, Mitra and Aten continued their advance. In the fuel depot, they found T-3M4. Together, they headed to the hangar where the Ebon Hawk awaited as their only means of escape. Upon arrival, the Sith were already in the hangar, firing relentlessly. Mitra took position in one of the turrets, returning fire while Aten prepared the ship for takeoff. At the last moment, Krea appeared. She had managed to escape Darth Sion, though at a high cost. Without stopping, she leaped into the ship, just as the hangar became a battlefield in flames. Aten propelled the ship out of the Harbinger, steering it toward the asteroid field. Behind them, the Sith ship did not cease its pursuit. Sion relentless, order-precise shots. One of the shots struck an asteroid, triggering a chain reaction. The shockwave expanded, consuming the mining station. In a matter of seconds, Peragus vanished in a devastating explosion. Everything had been erased. The impact of this loss was yet to be revealed, but for now, there was only one option: head to Talos. What Mitra did not understand was that every moment, every connection, every shared sensation with Traya brought her closer to the true plan. The Ebon Hawk emerged from hyperspace with severe damage, approaching the Citadel Station, orbiting the devastated planet Telos 4. On board the battered ship were 4 fugitives from the Peragus catastrophe: Mitra Surik, the Jedi exile whose connection to the Force had been severed; Traya, a mysterious elderly Jedi; Aten Rand, a smuggler with a shady past; and T3M4, the loyal astromech droid that had previously served the legendary Revan. The Ebon Hawk's approach triggered the Citadel Station's alarms. Emergency transmissions about the total destruction of the Peragus mining facility had arrived hours earlier, and the arrival of a ship from that sector immediately activated security protocols. Before they could explain their situation, the Telos security force detained the crew. The destruction of Peragus was no minor incident. The mining station had been Telos' primary fuel supplier, and its loss meant the Citadel Station could not maintain its orbit indefinitely, putting the planet's reconstruction plans in real danger. The 4 were escorted to detention cells, while a thorough investigation into their involvement in the disaster began. After the investigation, the Ebon Hawk's logs and testimonies coincided, exonerating them of direct responsibility for Peragus' destruction. However, given the gravity of the incident, they were ordered to remain on the Citadel Station until the Republic completed its own investigation. While Mitra and her team tried to gather more information about the station's situation, their ship was stolen by a mysterious figure. The loss of the Ebon Hawk meant they could not escape Talos, and was further proof that the galaxy would not allow them rest. With no time to waste, Mitra needed transport to descend to the planet. Free to move around the station, but unable to leave, the crew began exploring the massive orbital structure that was Telos' last bastion of hope. The Citadel Station was an engineering marvel, a massive complex divided into residential, commercial, entertainment, and administrative modules designed to house thousands of Telosian refugees while the planet underwent an ambitious restoration project. During their exploration, Mitra and her companions witnessed Telos' dire situation. The planet had been devastated during the Jedi Civil War when Darth Malak's forces bombarded it from orbit, turning its green landscapes into irradiated wastelands. The Telos Restoration Project represented the Republic's commitment to rebuilding what had been lost, using shield technology to purify and reseed small portions of the surface. During their stay, an Ithorian approached Mitra. As the primary representative of Choto Habat, the leader overseeing the restoration efforts, he explained the difficult situation they faced. The project was fractured by fierce competition with the Zerka Corporation, which had wrested control of numerous restoration zones from the Ithorians. They detailed to Mitra how the Ithorians, known for their extraordinary ability to stabilize ecosystems, had developed a plan to import fauna and flora from planets with rich food chains like Ithor, Onderon, and Dxun. However, contractual disputes with Zerka and the blockade of Onderon had compromised the agreement, delaying the arrival of essential biological specimens. After this, Zerka also approached Mitra, asking for her help, countering what the Ithorians had said. As Mitra absorbed this information, she contemplated her options. 2 factions offered potential alliances: the Ithorians under Choto Habat, who promised to help her restore her lost connection to the Force, and the Czerka Corporation, represented by the ambitious executive Jana Lorso, who offered substantial resources. The dichotomy between Choto Habat and Czerka represented fundamentally opposing visions for Telos' future. The Ithorians sought authentic restoration, re-establishing the planet's natural balance for long-term sustainability. Czerka, on the other hand, saw the project as an opportunity to exploit abandoned resources, particularly the military installations covering the planet's surface. Whatever Mitra's choice, she fulfilled her part of the deal by helping her respective ally. With the theft of the Ebon Hawk, the chosen ally fulfilled their part of the bargain by providing a shuttle to descend to the planet's surface. Records indicated that the Ebon Hawk had been taken to Telos' surface, where a breach in the planetary defense system would allow unauthorized access. As her transport departed the Citadel Station, Mitra's shuttle never reached its intended destination. A Czerka anti-aircraft turret shot it down, forcing a crash landing. Before crashing, Mitra noticed something unusual: a defense tower standing out among the structures. Its presence was puzzling in what was supposedly a research station dedicated to planetary restoration. The pieces did not fit. After the violent crash caused by the tower, Mitra and her companions found a familiar figure among the wreckage. As Sabrak approached, his mechanical arm reflecting the faint light of the dying planet. It was Baudur, a former military technician who had served under Mitra during the Mandalorian Wars. His reputation as a technological genius was legendary, but his greatest creation, the mass shadow generator that destroyed Malachor V, was also his greatest torment. Their meeting was no coincidence. The Force had mysterious ways of reconnecting intertwined destinies. The Sabrak informed Mitra about the situation on the surface. The Czerka Corporation had subverted the restoration project, using the assigned zones for its own purposes. To investigate what was happening and recover Mitra's lost ship, the Ebon Hawk, they would need to access the surface, but a shield network blocked the way. Upon reuniting with Mitra Surik, Baudur's respect for his general was absolute, remaining loyal to his leader. The planetary defense network had been designed to protect the restoration zones, but now served more sinister purposes. With Baudur's technical skills, who rejoined his former general's service, the team managed to temporarily deactivate a section of the shield network, allowing them access to Telos' surface. After several battles facing the threats of Telos' surface, Baudur finally managed to fully deactivate the shield network from a remote terminal. The path to finding the Ebon Hawk was clear, but the ship was nowhere nearby. Accessing the base's systems, Baudur discovered an anomaly in the polar regions, a breach in the planetary defense system suggesting unauthorized activity. The old military base provided them with a functional shuttle, setting course for Telos' polar regions. What they found exceeded their expectations. After another forced landing caused by HK-50 assassin droids, they discovered a hidden Jedi Academy beneath the icy surface. The shuttle's crash on Telos 4's polar plateau was no accident. After defeating the HK-50 assassin droids, Mitra Surik found an entrance to a subterranean complex hidden beneath the ice. What seemed like a hidden facility was, in reality, a secret Jedi Academy. Before crossing, Mitra and her companions were surrounded by the Handmaiden Sisters, Echani warriors trained in ancient martial disciplines. These white-haired women served as guardians. With military precision and efficiency, they disarmed and separated the group. Energy containment cells soon imprisoned Kreia, Aten Rand, and Bao-Dur, while Mitra was led before the Sanctuary's true guardian. In the Academy's heart awaited Jedi Master Atris, the same one who had orchestrated Mitra's return. As the Jedi historian, Atris had dedicated herself to preserving the Order's knowledge after the devastation of the Mandalorian Wars and the subsequent Sith persecution. Atris was not simply a former Jedi colleague. The Master had been a prominent member of the Council that had sentenced Mitra to exile a decade earlier, and perhaps the most vocal in her condemnation. The bitterness and resentment emanating from her contradicted her pristine appearance. As she interrogated Mitra about the destruction of the Peragus mining station, each word revealed a deep internal conflict. Atris struggled between her devotion to the Jedi Code and unresolved personal feelings of betrayal. The revelation that the Sith were hunting Mitra altered the confrontation's course. Despite her initial hostility, Atris recognized the greater threat they posed to the galaxy. Reluctantly, she accepted Mitra's offer to help confront this threat, instructing her to gather the few surviving Jedi Masters. Since the start of the Jedi Purge, the Sith attacks on the Jedi had been orchestrated from the shadows, to the point where the true enemies were unknown. Thus, the last surviving Jedi had chosen exile. After her meeting with Atris in the Academy's hangars, Mitra reunited with T-3M4. Despite its apparent simplicity, T-3 had accomplished an extraordinary feat during its captivity in the Academy. Taking advantage of the bidirectional connection established, the cunning droid had infiltrated the Jedi Master's archives. When the group reunited aboard the Ebon Hawk, T-3M4 revealed its discoveries. It had not only obtained the coordinates of the last 5 surviving Jedi Masters, Atris on Telos, Kavar on Onderon, Vruk Lamar on Dantooine, Sezcael on Nar Shaddaa, and Lonavash on Korriban, but also recovered the holographic recording of Mitra's trial. The projection transported everyone to that decisive moment a decade earlier. Mitra, then clad in Jedi robes worn by war, stood before the semicircle of masters. Their faces reflected everything from disappointment to indignation as they debated the fate of the one who had defied the Council to join Revan and Malak in the Mandalorian Wars. The recording showed a silent Mitra, accepting her judgment with stoicism. At the trial's end, upon being exiled, Mitra drove her lightsaber into the center of the Council chamber, renouncing the Order before departing into exile. What the recording revealed, however, went beyond the public trial. The Masters had privately discussed something they never communicated to Mitra: the peculiar nature of her connection to the Force. After Malachor, where Mitra had ordered the activation of the mass shadow generator that ended the war at the cost of thousands of lives, something extraordinary had occurred. The massive loss of life had created a wound in the Force, and Mitra, unable to bear such trauma, had subconsciously severed her connection to the Force as a survival mechanism. The Masters, fearful of this unusual ability and the influence Revan had exerted over her, decided to exile her without revealing the true nature of her condition. The recording also contained mentions of Revan, the charismatic Jedi who had led many into the war against the Mandalorians. The Master's words reflected concern about the influence Revan had over Jedi like Mitra, but also confusion about his true motivations for entering the war. Some speculated that Revan had perceived a greater threat lurking beyond the Outer Rim, but such theories had been dismissed as justifications for disobedience. As the crew processed what they had seen, an additional presence made itself known aboard. Brianna, one of the handmaidens, had received secret orders from Atris to infiltrate the ship. Her mission: to monitor Mitra's activities and confirm she still served the light side of the Force. With the coordinates of the Jedi Masters and the new addition to the crew, an uneasy alliance was formed. Mitra would seek the surviving Masters to unite them against the Sith threat, while Atris coordinated from her academy on Telos. The agreement, however, was based on half-truths from both Atris and Traya. Darkness enveloped Nar Shaddaa in a mantle of corruption and despair. The Citadel Station had been only the beginning of her odyssey, and now Nar Shaddaa represented the next link. Nar Shaddaa was not simply a lawless port, it was one of the galaxy's greatest hubs of criminal activity. Here, alliances were forged with whispers in dark alleys and broken with a silent shot to the back. This place housed refugees with no future, slaves with no hope, and bounty hunters with prices on their heads. If a fugitive Jedi sought to hide, there was no better place. But it also meant enemies could find them just as easily. It did not take long before their presence attracted the wrong attention. Godo, an enigmatic crime lord, had already taken note of the exiled Jedi's arrival. The hunt was not to kill her, but to use her. Godo had his own interests in the galaxy's stability, and a lost Jedi was a valuable piece on his board. The alleys led them to the refugee sector, an area oozing misery at every corner. Families displaced by the Sith and Mandalorian wars huddled under makeshift shelters, waiting for something that would never come. Mitra felt the weight of tragedy in every empty gaze that watched her pass. The exchange operated here with total impunity, exploiting the desperate and selling false promises of escape. The rumor of her arrival spread like wildfire in the darkness. Bounty hunters from across the galaxy began moving under Godo's orders. The weight of Nar Shaddaa began to affect Mitra. The oppression of hopelessness, the constant threat of violence, and the place's corruption made her question her purpose. The shadow of the Jedi Civil War still enveloped her, and though she had severed her ties with the Force, the past never left her in peace. It did not help that her own allies were mysteries themselves. Atton Rand, for example, had always been an enigma, but Nar Shaddaa seemed to awaken something in him, something he tried to hide. During their exploration, the tension between them grew, until confrontation became inevitable. Mitra sensed something beyond his carefree facade, a buried truth demanding to come out. Atton's contempt for the Jedi was evident. His hostility was not based on mere words. Mitra felt the conflict in him, the anger mixed with guilt, and the need to uncover the truth led her to press him more than he was willing to tolerate. Finally, the barrier broke. Atton was not just a smuggler with a nebulous past. He had been part of Revan's army after the Mandalorian Wars. When the Jedi Order fractured, Revan's soldiers not only followed their leader, but also adopted new teachings. For them, the Jedi on Coruscant and Dantooine were traitors, cowards who had refused to fight in the war. Their loyalty lay with those who had fought alongside them on the battlefield. However, Atton was not just a soldier. His role in the Jedi Civil War was far darker. He did not just kill Jedi, he hunted them. He knew their weaknesses, how to silence them before they could react. He did not face them directly, but trapped them with cunning and cruelty. He gassed them, subdued them with substances that left them defenseless, stripped them of everything before finishing them off. For him, watching a Jedi fall was a pleasure, proof of his superiority over an order he considered weak. But the pleasure turned into a burden. Guilt grew inside him until it became unbearable. It was not compassion that made him desert, but the realization of what he had become. He could no longer serve Revan, could no longer continue the hunt, and so he ended up on Nar Shaddaa, a place where no one asked about the past, and where sins could be buried under layers of corruption and self-loathing. Mitra did not utter a word. Atton's revelation spoke for itself. He sought neither redemption nor forgiveness, but now his loyalty was no mystery. He had chosen to follow her, not out of duty, but because in her he saw something different, something that bound him to her. Mietra had something special. Nar Shaddaa was a mirror reflecting everyone's past as they walked its dirty corridors. Mitra Surik had come seeking answers, but instead found echoes of ancient tragedies. Moreover, KOTOR's shadow still loomed over her, waiting for the opportune moment to make his move. While part of the crew rested in their quarters, a dark presence slipped silently through the ship's corridors. It was Visa's Mar, a Miraluka sent by her master, one of the pillars of the Sith Triumvirate, Darth Nihilus. Visas had been sent to eliminate the Jedi's last hope. Visas was compelled to obey, but did not fully understand the power she would face. With the Ebon Hawk's crew unconscious, the Miraluka infiltrated until she found her target. The duel was brief but intense. Mitra, despite her long exile and disconnection from the Force, demonstrated why she had once been feared on the battlefield. The battle concluded when Surik, in a quick and decisive move, disarmed the assassin, leaving her defenseless at her feet. But what happened next would change both their destinies. Instead of executing her attacker as survival logic dictated, Mitra chose compassion. The exile spared her life. During her recovery, Mitra and Visas shared moments of introspection. Amid these events, Baudur approached her with a concern. In a low and cautious voice, he warned Surik about Traya, the mysterious elder who had joined their journey. The technician sensed something unsettling about her. Though Mitra valued Baudur's advice, she maintained her decision. This trust was shaken when Traya confronted Mitra about her choice to spare Visas. The elder, always shrouded in shadows and mystery, questioned the wisdom of keeping a Sith ally alive. For Traya, compassion was a weakness that could be exploited. Meanwhile, still on Nar Shaddaa, the search for Jedi Master Zeskayel was underway. His actions in the refugee sector, helping the displaced and confronting the criminal organization known as the Exchange, had not gone unnoticed. Soon, she received a message from Viski, a Quarren working for the Exchange's mysterious boss, Gato. Viski proposed a meeting at the Yek-Yek-Tar, a cantina notorious for its toxic atmosphere, breathable only for alien species. The message suggested Viski might have valuable information. Though aware it was likely a trap, Surik decided to proceed. She prepared, but her plans were interrupted. On the way to the cantina, Mitra was intercepted by Mira, a bounty hunter. Unbeknownst to Surik, Mira had been hired by Zeskayel himself to protect her. The bounty hunter confirmed that Viski would attempt to capture Mitra and deliver her to Goto. To fulfill her duty, she impersonated the exile, donned the environmental suit, and entered the cantina herself to negotiate peacefully with Viski, but her efforts were in vain. It was here that Mitra would discover Viski had even betrayed Goto, taking control and conspiring behind his back. After a brief period unconscious, undeterred by this setback, Mitra decided to enter the establishment unprotected. With determination, she fought her way through Viski's mercenaries and thugs. After defeating Viski's henchmen, Mitra followed his trail. What she did not know was that Mira had been captured by Viski and taken to an arena deep within his hideout. There, Viski intended for Hanhar, a Wookiee bounty hunter with a past intertwined with Mira's, to annihilate her. However, Mira proved to be a formidable adversary and defeated the Wookiee. When Mitra finally confronted Viski in his stronghold, the Quarren awaited her to capture her alive and deliver her to Goto. His plan was to lure Goto, who until then had only communicated through holograms, to present himself in person at the opportunity of obtaining a live Jedi. Visquis's plan failed when his bounty hunters betrayed him, killing the Quarren and capturing Mitra for Gato's ship. There, Zurich met the enigmatic KOTOR, who appeared as a spherical holo. He spoke about KOTOR's destruction and how the Sith threatened the Republic's stability. He asked her to stabilize certain regions of the galaxy affected by the Jedi-Sith conflict and to confront the threat attacking from the shadows. Meanwhile, Mitra's companions, led by Mira, devised a rescue plan. Once aboard, they rescued Mitra, sabotaging the ship's cloaking device in the process. Exposed and vulnerable for the first time, the ship was immediately attacked by Republic forces and KOTOR's rivals, who had long been searching for him. Mitra's group escaped in the Ebon Hawk. G0T0, a black orb-shaped droid presenting himself as KOTOR's gift, joined them, though he was actually KOTOR himself. Back on Nar Shaddaa, Mitra finally reunited with Sezcael. The Jedi Master, impressed by her actions, revealed part of the truth about her exile. He shared his own doubts about the Jedi Council's decisions, including how they had handled both Revan's and Mitra's situations. Sezcael revealed that the Jedi had scattered across the galaxy, hiding on worlds where the Force flowed chaotically, trying to evade the mysterious threat haunting them. With a heavy burden of doubts about the Order's ways, Sezcael admitted that the day they exiled Mitra was also when he decided to leave the Council. He acknowledged the Master's rejection of what she represented, the possibility of living disconnected from the Force. Before departing for Dantooine, where he would await the gathering of the last Masters, Sezcael shared a combat technique with Mitra, knowledge that might serve her in the battles to come. His final words resonated not just with guilt, but also with hope that the exiled returned might, in some way, repair the past mistakes, thus completing her objective on Nar Shaddaa. The Ebon Hawk approached Onderon when a series of laser shots illuminated the dark void of space. One of General Baklu's commanders had sent Onderonian fighters to intercept him. Despite the efforts, Mitra and her crew were forced to make an emergency landing on Dxun, Onderon's jungle moon. The Battle of Dxun had been cruel, with casualties so high that the forest still seemed to whisper the screams of the fallen. The dense vegetation and humid atmosphere of the moon had made the Republic troops' advance extremely difficult, turning every conquered meter into a tactical nightmare. As Mitra and her group ventured deeper into the jungle, Traya reminded them that Dxun was where the Mandalorian Wars had truly begun. They needed to find an alternate route. Exploration was no easy task. The moon was infested with wild beasts. During their trek, the group found wreckage of downed ships, silent witnesses to the ferocity of the Battle of Dxun. These remnants of war dated precisely to the years 3961 and 3960 before the Battle of Yavin, the most intense period of the Mandalorian Wars. Mitra couldn't help but be assaulted by memories of those days. The deafening noise of explosions, soldiers' screams, desperate orders, and the smell of burning flesh. As they delved deeper into the jungle, the group encountered an unexpected surprise. A hidden Mandalorian camp nestled within the vegetation. Far from being hostile, these Mandalorians appeared disciplined and organized. After a tense first contact, they were escorted to the center of the camp where their leader awaited. To Mitra's astonishment, it was Canderous Ordo, now known as Mandalore the Preserver. Canderous had come a long way to stand there as Mandalore, leader of the Mandalorians. After accompanying Revan in the search for the Starforge and defeating Darth Malak, his bond with the Jedi had not ended there. Revan sought him out a few years later for another adventure. After various conflicts and moments, Canderous, with Revan's help, found the Mask of Mandalore and became Mandalore the Preserver. The new Mandalorian leader had been tasked with reuniting the scattered Mandalorian clans across the galaxy. Since the defeat of Exar Kun, the Mandalorians had claimed Dxun as their home, a place from which to rebuild their warrior society. The conversation between Mandalore and Mitra was tense but respectful. They had once been enemies, but now they shared a common foe, the Sith. Mandalore offered Mitra a solution to their problem. He had a ship capable of evading Onderon's military blockade. However, he wasn't willing to lend such aid without guarantees. Mitra had to prove her worth to him and his Mandalorian followers. Thus began a series of trials for Mitra in the camp. She participated in hunts for wild beasts, demonstrating her combat prowess. She helped repair perimeter defenses and damaged communication systems. She even engaged in honor duels against Mandalorian warriors, earning the respect of her former enemies with each victory. As Mitra completed these tasks, Traya held a private conversation with Mandalore. The Elder, with her usual provocative tone, reminded Canderous of the Mandalorians' past defeats, suggesting their culture might be destined to fade. Mandalore, ever proud, defended his people's honor, declaring they would survive as they always had, by adapting and evolving. But Traya had other motives for this encounter. Using a mix of manipulation and knowledge of Canderous's past, she subtly blackmailed him. She extracted a promise that he would protect Mitra on her journey, not out of loyalty to her, but as a debt to Revan's legacy, who had been both his greatest enemy and most respected ally. Just as Mitra had earned enough prestige and Mandalore was preparing his personal ship for the journey to the capital of Onderon, the camp came under a surprise attack. A group of Sith assassins, following orders from the Dark Lords, had located Mitra's position and sought to eliminate her. The ensuing battle was brief but intense. Mitra, alongside her companions and the Mandalorian warriors, repelled the attackers, but it was clear the Sith were tracking their movements. After the battle, Mandalore decided it was time to depart. Not only would he provide transport to Onderon for Mitra, but he would also join her cause. He saw in her an opportunity not just to fight the Sith, but to continue the mission Revan had entrusted to him, reuniting the scattered Mandalorian clans across the galaxy. Mitra Surik set off for Onderon with a new ally, Mandalore the Preserver. The Mandalorian shuttle breached Onderon's atmosphere with military precision, evading the blockade imposed by General Vaklu's loyalists. Mandalore the Preserver had kept his word, providing Mitra Surik and her team safe passage to Onderon. Upon landing at the spaceport, the political tension was palpable even in the air they breathed. The city was engulfed in a Cold War, divided between two clearly defined factions. On one side were those loyal to Queen Talia, the rightful monarch who defended Onderon's continued allegiance to the Galactic Republic. On the other were the followers of General Vaklu, who fervently advocated for the planet's independence. What many citizens didn't know was that behind Vaklu lurked the Sith, fanning the conflict for their own ends. Under the guise of a nationalist movement, the Darkside's forces sought to destabilize another Republic stronghold. The division didn't just affect the political class, it had deeply fractured Onderonian society. Entire families had split over opposing loyalties, businesses closed their doors to customers based on affiliations, and the streets bore a tense calm threatening to erupt at any moment. This situation wasn't new in Onderon's history. Centuries earlier, the planet had faced a civil war between the walled city of Isis and the exiles dwelling in the jungle. Later, Onderon had also been the stage for fierce battles during the Mandalorian Wars. The proximity to its moon, Dxun, had facilitated Mandalorian infiltration, allowing them to establish bases from which they launched attacks. Mitra Surik knew this history well. She herself had participated in Onderon's liberation under Revan's command. To advance her mission of finding Jedi Master Kavar, Mitra needed contacts in Isis. Mandalore had provided one, Dxun, a doctor with multiple connections in the city's underworld. However, they discovered Gant had been arrested, accused of murdering an officer in Isis's security forces. Convinced of Gant's strategic importance, Mitra decided to investigate the case. With Mandalore and her team's help, she scoured Isis, interrogating witnesses and gathering evidence. Their investigation led them to irrefutable proof of Gant's innocence. Presented with this evidence, the local guard captain released the doctor, who, grateful, fulfilled his part of the bargain. Dxun proved crucial to Mitra's mission, as he not only understood Onderon's current politics, but also had contacts within the royal palace, where Master Kavar secretly served as Queen Talia's advisor. Using secure channels, Gant arranged a meeting between Mitra and Kavar at a local cantina, far from Vaklu's watchful eyes. The meeting with the Jedi Master in the cantina began cautiously. In the past, Kavar had also participated in Mitra's exile years earlier. The Master showed a mix of surprise and wariness upon seeing her again. Just as they began discussing the true reasons behind her expulsion from the Jedi Order and the growing threat of the Sith Lords, the meeting was violently interrupted. Colonel Tobin, Vaklu's right-hand man, stormed the cantina with a squad of soldiers, determined to capture Kavar and eliminate Mitra. With precise movements, the Jedi Master used the Force to temporarily immobilize the attackers, promising to contact Mitra when it was safe before vanishing into Aziz's alleyways. While Tobin pursued Kavar, Mitra, Mandalore, and the rest of the team were forced to fight their way through Vaklu's loyalists, who had surrounded the cantina. With border controls on high alert, the group managed to evade the last checkpoints and leave the capital. The mission had been interrupted, but it wasn't a complete failure. Mitra had made contact with Kavar and confirmed Sith infiltration in Onderon's crisis, key pieces of the galactic puzzle she was trying to solve. They returned to Dxun in the Mandalorian shuttle, where Mandalore, impressed by Mitra's skills and determination, decided to join her cause. He saw in her not just an ally against the Sith, but an opportunity to continue his own mission, locating and reuniting the scattered Mandalorian clans under his leadership. For Mitra, adding a warrior as experienced as Canderous Ordo to her team was a significant advantage for the challenges ahead. The sun rose over Dantooine's vast grasslands, illuminating the scars war had left on the landscape. The Ebon Hawk had landed on a small platform near what was once a thriving settlement. The wind carried the scent of fresh grass, mixed with the unmistakable odor of scorched earth, a persistent reminder of the orbital bombardment Darth Malak had ordered during the Jedi Civil War. Dantooine, once a peaceful world and home to a major Jedi enclave, was now a shadow of its former self. The survivors, determined to rebuild their lives, had formed a provisional government called Kunda. Leading this fragile attempt at civilization was Terena Dare, a woman of unyielding will who had taken responsibility for guiding the settlers in their efforts to reclaim what was lost. Surik walked the paths, carefully observing the settlers' behavior. The wary glances, whispers at her passing, and tension in the air were evident. Distrust toward anyone with Jedi connections was palpable. She couldn't blame them. The Jedi had promised protection, but brought only destruction. Concealing her identity as a Jedi, Surik blended in with the settlers, listening to conversations and gathering information. Soon, she caught rumors that Administrator Adair was in contact with a Jedi who had been helping protect the settlement. After several careful interactions, Surik secured an audience with Terena Adair. The administrator, though initially reserved, recognized in the exile someone who could help. Adair revealed that she was indeed in contact with Master Vrook Lamar, one of the few surviving Jedi who had been secretly working to protect the settlers. However, he hadn't communicated in days, and she feared something might have happened to him. Adair granted Surik permission to explore the ruins of the Jedi Enclave for clues about Lamar's whereabouts. With this, Surik headed toward what remained of the Jedi Enclave. The structure, once majestic, was now little more than a skeleton of twisted stone and metal. The gardens that had been places of meditation and learning were now overrun with weeds. As she descended into the Enclave's lower levels, once an extensive library, she found a man meticulously sifting through the debris. During her exploration, she met Mikal, who introduced himself as a former Jedi initiate whose training had been interrupted by the Mandalorian Wars. Now, he served as a historian and Republic soldier. Impressed by Surik's return, Mikal decided to join her group. Together, they explored the remnants of the library, finally finding a hidden datapad among the wreckage. The device contained crucial information. Master Vrook Lamar had been captured by mercenaries and was being held in the Crystal Cave, a sacred Jedi site where lightsaber crystals were gathered. The Crystal Cave was now a mercenary nest. Surik and her group infiltrated the cave. The crystals, which once shone with the purity of the Force, now reflected the shadows of the conflicts that had ravaged the planet. After battling numerous mercenaries, Surik found Master Vrook Lamar. Contrary to her expectations, Lamar showed no gratitude for the rescue. Instead, he reprimanded her severely. The Jedi Master revealed he had allowed himself to be captured intentionally to infiltrate the enemy ranks and uncover their plans. Surik's intervention had compromised his mission, but there was still time to act. Upon exiting the cave, Surik came face to face with Azkul, the mercenary leader. A veteran of the Jedi Civil War, Azkul had been trained at Darth Malak's academy and now led a group of displaced soldiers. With a cold smile, he offered Surik a place at his side to overthrow Kunda and establish a new order on Dantooine. Surik rejected the offer without hesitation. Azkul, visibly displeased, ordered his men to eliminate her while he retreated to prepare the assault on Kunda. After defeating the mercenaries, Surik hurried back to the settlement to warn Adair of the impending attack. With little time to prepare, Surik took charge of strengthening Kunda's defenses. Working closely with the militia leader, she set traps and barricades at strategic points to slow the enemy's advance. When Azkul and his mercenaries launched their assault, they met far more organized resistance than anticipated. Kunda's improved defenses wreaked havoc on their ranks. The battle culminated in a direct confrontation between Surik and Azkul. The former Sith soldier, though formidable, was no match for the exile. After his defeat, the remaining mercenaries fled in disarray, leaving Kunda battered but victorious. With the threat neutralized, Master Vrook Lamar finally agreed to speak with Surik. In a tense conversation, Lamar explained that the surviving Jedi had scattered to avoid extermination by the Sith, who were systematically hunting down Force sensitives. He warned Surik about Traya, her enigmatic companion, suggesting she harbored sinister motives. In recognition of her bravery and skill, Vrook trained Surik in a new lightsaber combat form, sharing knowledge few Jedi had mastered. Finally, though with evident reluctance, he agreed to meet with the other Jedi Masters Surik might gather. As the Ebon Hawk prepared to depart, Surik took one last look at Dantooine's grasslands. The planet remained wounded, but there was hope. The settlers, inspired by Kunda's victory, began looking toward the future with renewed determination. And though the Jedi had fallen from grace, perhaps not all was lost. The Force, as always, would find its balance.